Alright, hello everybody. I have a surprise for y'all.
Oh my gosh, she's bald!
I am here today to start a new reading vlog. I decided to do these in lieu of wrap-ups where I just vlog every few books that I read. So I'm currently reading Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte. It's about Jane. She becomes a governess for this little French girl and ends up falling in love with his caretaker, Mr. Rochester. But it's also about her life and reflections and whatever else it's about. I'm like 160 pages in. That's 14 chapters in this book. And I am loving it. I really enjoy Jane as a character. I'm enjoying the setting. I'm enjoying the writing. The only thing that isn't really sitting well with me is Mr. Rochester. This man is like 20 years older than Jane.
Girl, prison, honey.
I would also like to read at some point before I finish Jane Eyre. I'll probably just pick up The Time Machine. This is by H.G. Wells. It is super duper short, so I'm excited to read this one. And then finally I have Frankenstein by Mary Shelley, another classic sci-fi book that I've always wanted to read. I came across this copy for really cheap, so I bought it and I'm excited to get into it. I'm excited to get into Miss Frankenstein. That didn't sound right. Okay, I have not made any much reading progress since the last clip, which is nothing new for me. But I did read a little bit more of Jane Eyre, and I have a lot to say, specifically about Mr. Rochester. This old man is trauma dumping on his 18-year-old nanny because, like, years ago, some French woman cheated on his ass. He was basically like her sugar daddy and giving her a whole bunch of money to do whatever she wants. And then he found out that Miss Mademoiselle was stepping out. I'm just going to refer to that woman as Mademoiselle from now on. Mademoiselle. Oui, oui. Parce que elle est française, n'est-ce pas? I took French for like 2 years, so whenever Adele is having her little dialogue moments, I understand at least 25% of what she's saying. And it makes me feel so, I don't know, like bilingual or something. Je m'appelle Sajid. J'habite à Trinité et Tobago. J'ai 27 ans. And on top of that, he has a crush on her, and she's 18. It's like, ugh. Brother, ugh.
Brother, ugh.
So, please, like, get your hands on some parchment and a quill and write your thoughts out. Dear diary, I am ugly and lonely and kind of a predator.
Prison, honey.
Leave Jane alone. Let her do her work. She's taking care of your bastard child. And also, he's not a very smart person. Right? Because somebody was trying to burn his ass alive while he was sleeping, and Jane went into the room and was trying to out the fire with a bucket of water, and he got up and was like, "Is there a flood? Is it flooding?" You're on the second floor. It's not gonna have a flood. I'm 185 pages in, and my next goal is page 250, and that should take me like halfway through this book. So when I reach that page goal, I'm going to put the book down just for a little bit and pick up The Time Machine by H.G. Wells, just because this is a really long book and I want to finish more books over the next couple of weeks. So reading something short will help me do that, and I also just really want to read this book. And I may even go ahead and read Down Among the Sticks and Bones by Seanan McGuire. This is the second book in the Wayward Children series. If you watch my last vlog, you would know that I read the first book, which is Every Heart a Doorway. I adored that book, and I really want to continue on with the rest of the series. And speaking of this, when I'm done with Jane Eyre, I'm going to read Wide Sargasso Sea. I got this copy a couple weeks ago when I went to Paper Base Bookshop, which is my absolute favorite bookstore in Trinidad and Tobago. It's an independent bookstore that sells predominantly Caribbean literature, and Wide Sargasso Sea is technically considered Caribbean literature. It is supposed to be the story of the woman in the attic from Jane Eyre. These will be the only books that I focus on for this video. I may not get around to Frankenstein anymore because I really want to finish all of these books before Ramadan, and time is timing.
When do we want it? What do we want? When you want it. That's it.
Women's rights. Human rights. Women's rights are. Human rights. Women's rights are. Human rights. Workers' rights are. Human rights. Sexual rights are. Human rights. What do we want?
Gender justice.
When do we want it?
Now.
What do we want?
Gender justice.
When do we want it?
Now.
Good afternoon, Port of Spain. Good afternoon to everyone on Independence Square. We are here marching for International Women's Day. We invite you on the street to come march with us. Come join us. Stand in solidarity. I'm talking to you. Come march with us.
Well, we're like a week into Ramadan and I haven't made any progress yet, so here we are. Yeah, so I wouldn't say I made no progress whatsoever, but first of all, I don't think I'm gonna read The Time Machine in this video anymore. It's just going to be Down Among the Sticks and Bones, Jane Eyre, and White Sargasso Sea. And I actually did start and finish Down Among the Sticks and Bones. So this, if you didn't know, is the second book in the Wayward Children series. This is the first book here, Every Had a Doorway. I talked about it in my last wrap-up video. So yeah, fairy tale retelling, but maybe not so much retelling as much as it's more like fairy tale inspired. And the series doesn't really seem to have an overarching narrative. Like each book is kind of its own standalone. They're more like companions. And this one is sort of a prequel to two of the characters that we meet in the first book. So the whole gist of the series is that we're following children, from small children to teenagers, who all have ventured into another world through like a portal or a magical door or a rabbit hole or something, and they go and they live in like another universe or realm that has magic and that is like fantasy or whatever. The first book was kind of like about this boarding school that was like a rehabilitation center for some of these children who end up coming back to our world, and two of the characters that we meet there are twins, Jack and Jill. I don't think that they are the actual Jack and Jill as much as their story is like Jack and Jill inspired, I guess. They are twin girls, Jacqueline and Jillian, and in this book we're introduced to them from their birth, and we learn immediately that their parents are very vapid and superficial and don't actually really care about them. So at 12 years old, the girls end up finding this little staircase in their grandmother's trunk that leads them to this alternate reality that is very much inspired by, I would say, like 19th century Victorian-ish England. I don't know if that's the best way to describe it. The world building isn't exactly clear. The reason why I say that is because both of them end up getting involved with two different characters. One very much inspired by Dracula and the other one very much inspired by Dr. Frankenstein. So Jillian, who is the more sort of frilly, girly girl, ends up going to live with Dracula as his daughter. And Jacqueline, who I suppose is more the nerdy, tomboyish kind of person, goes to live as the apprentice for Dr. Frankenstein. It's not Dracula and Frankenstein, by the way. They're called the Count and Dr. Bleak. The book ends up focusing on the ways in which Jillian becomes like super unhinged under the mentorship of the Count, who is also honestly kind of a predator because he's like kind of a vampire and he wants her to become a vampire too, but he like needs to wait till she's 18 to start like, I don't know, sucking her blood or something.
Prison, honey.
Listen, I'm really tired of these stories about these Victorian-aged predators. Like, what's going on here?
What's that? What's that, brother?
I loved this. I thought it was a really awesome follow-up to the first book, and I love that it was a prequel to two characters who I honestly found to be the most interesting in that first book as well. But we need to talk about Jane Eyre, because I have a lot to say. So last time I gave you an update, I was probably like 100 and something pages in, I think. Now I'm 250 pages in, which is kind of basically like the halfway mark for this edition. I have a lot of thoughts and I don't know where to put them. So I'm just going to spew them out right now. Most of what I have to say is really about Mr. Rochester, because I have a lot of questions about this man. And don't get me wrong, I understand that this book was published like a really long time ago, so obviously you shouldn't judge it through a modern lens. But I'm going to judge it through a modern lens because I am modern and I have a lens. I was gonna say the B word, but I'm fasting. I don't think I could say that. Bismillah. B. Why do people watch my videos? What's wrong with y'all? What's wrong with you? Why did you make it this far into this video? First of all, I'm gonna need Jane to go see a therapist or something, because this woman is down bad for this man. For what reason? I don't know. Like, ma'am, we need to like work on our self-love and self-respect, because she started to get super duper insecure when she realized that Mr. Rochester was showing like interest in this woman whose name is like Miss Instagram or something, I don't know. And so Miss Instagram is like fair and lovely and beautiful. So like Jane did like a sculpture of her, and she did a painting of herself, like a self-portrait, and she purposefully made the sculpture look nice, I guess, and then she made her self-portrait look ugly so that she can like, I don't know, self-loathe. She named the portrait, right? And this is what she named it, right? And and I quote, "Portrait of a governess, disconnected, poor and plain." Baby, honey, Jane, is this who we are?
Oh my God, is this who we are? Is this what we represent?
And Mr. Rochester is just getting worse. First of all, I'm sorry, I don't care if this book was published in the 1840s and is set like earlier, like he's not beating the manipulative allegations for me at all. This man literally got up in drag.
A drag queen?
To pretend to be a Romani fortune teller woman so that he could play with Jane's mind. And she was like, "Oh, sir, I didn't know it was you. What a lovely surprise." Girl! I'll also, I have a question. Don't quite know how to approach it. How does Mr. Rochester get his money? We know he has wealth, and I don't think they were quite clear about where his wealth came from, at least not at this point in the book. And it says in the book, like it's hinting to the fact that he has a past in the West Indies. Y'all know the West Indies. That's where I'm from. That's where we're here right now. Well, you're not, but I am. But maybe you are. I don't know. I don't know where you are. Comment down below, which part of the world are you from? Where are you watching my videos from? But no, so like, he had a past in the West Indies. He lived in Jamaica for some time, apparently. And that seems to be where his family's wealth is from. Y'all doing the math here with me, right? Like, so this is a white man from 19th century England who has a past in the West Indies.
That's suspicious. That's weird.
Need I remind you all what was happening in the 19th century in the West Indies? It starts with slay and ends with Avery. And after that, it starts with in and ends with denture ship. So I'm a little bit concerned right now that this man is a goddamn slave owner. Yo, this book is sending me for a ride. I will continue to update you all as I make progress. You know what I need to stop doing? I need to stop assuming that I know what I'm doing with these videos. I have been wanting to do this Ramadan reading vlog thing. So I was like, I need to finish Jane Eyre as soon as possible so that I could do a separate vlog so that my Jane Eyre vlog doesn't cut into my Ramadan vlog. I've read 2 other books that I haven't talked about in this vlog as yet because I'm like, okay, no, I need to talk about these in like other videos. Now I'm just like, you know what? I'm just going to talk about how many books I read within a given period of time. And when I feel like I've talked about enough books in a video, I'll just end the video and start a new vlog. Sometimes, you know, you kind of have to recognize your own personal ability and capacity and not create too many standards and expectations for yourself. So this is not a moment of failure for me. This is a moment of growth.
Hello. Let's celebrate that.
Let's talk about the 2 books that I didn't talk about since I started making this vlog. Angela Davis's Freedom is a Constant Struggle, which is a book that is not in its entirety about Palestine. And to be quite frank, the parts of it that are about Palestine are not actually about understanding exactly what is happening in Palestine or really contextualizing it. Rather, this is a compilation of speeches that Davis has given over the past 10 years, which reflect on a lifetime of activism on her part, where she reflects on the importance of solidarity, and not just solidarity in the sense that, you know, you must just support other people's causes, but rather you must build other causes into your own cause. Every manifestation of oppression in our world today is deeply interconnected. You can trace everything back to a global system of white supremacist, capitalist, neoliberal, hetero-patriarchy, okay, to borrow some terms from bell hooks, I guess. So what she's kind of arguing here is that it would be remiss of us to be invested solely in one cause in isolation. It doesn't really make any sense. You have to build an understanding of other causes across the world in your own activism around the particular issues that you are passionate about. It's a really important book, and I actually listened to this on audio, and I would recommend that you do the same. The reason for that being that they were originally delivered as speeches anyways. Like, sometimes, you know, we think that, you know, the book comes first, then the audiobook, but in this case, it's actually the other way around. So I would recommend that you listen to the audiobook. It's only like 4 hours long. It's a quick listen. The other book that I read was part of my goal to read books by Muslim authors during Ramadan, and this is the only one that I've read so far, and that's Where the Streets Had a Name by Randa Abdel Fattah. It is a story about a 13-year-old girl named Hayat who was originally from, I believe it's called Beit Jalla, but their family was displaced displaced by the Israeli army from their lovely home to a cramped apartment in Bethlehem. The book kind of centers around Hayat's relationship with her city or grandmother Zainab, who often talks about life before the Nakba, before the major displacement of Palestinians, and when she used to live in West Jerusalem. So when Siti Zainab falls ill, Hayat really feels it necessary to go to West Jerusalem and retrieve soil from the land that her grandmother came from and bring it back for her grandmother to touch. That's kind of what the story is about. It's about this young girl from the West Bank who's trying to sneak over into Israel without the right paperwork or passes, and she does that with her best friend Sammy, who's kind of like the sidekick in the story. So the story focuses on that, and focuses on how the movement of Palestinians is so heavily policed and limited because of the fact that they are occupied by the Israeli state. On top of that, it is also about Zainab healing from her own trauma and coming to terms with it. She has a huge scar on her face because of something that she experienced in her childhood that she has not fully come to terms with or unpacked. So in the story, she is learning to unpack that, and the journey that she's on is forcing her to do that. It was just, oh my god, this is just one of the best YA novels I've ever read, and y'all just need to read it.
Like, seeing as this turtle cannot go back into her shell at all, so she's basically defenseless because she's also soft shell. The soft shell turtle. Hence why. Hence why doing this movement is that can break your.
Oh my god, I should have bring one of the Wayward children's books to take a picture here. That would have been so good. Ah! Look at the little cave in the distance. Yeah, this vlog is going on a lot longer than I thought it would because I have not finished Jane Eyre yet. No major updates, no major complaints about Mr. Rochester. He's been behaving himself for the past few chapters. Actually, no, wait, no, he hasn't, because he was gaslighting Jane into thinking that he was going to marry Miss Instagram. And then he was like, actually, no, psych, it's you. And Jane was like, oh, sir, you fooled me. Jane, what are we doing? And they keep talking in the book about how he's kind of ugly, and I'm just like, all of this for like an ugly man who might own slaves? Anywho's, I did listen to 2 other books in the interim, so I completed, except for Palestine, The Limits of Progressive Politics by 2 people whose names I don't remember. This was fine. I think the main thing I appreciated about this book, which is essentially what it's about, is the ways in which American liberal politics really and truly does not consider the liberation of Palestine something that is supposed to be a key component of their politics. He's talking about how every single US president, even the most progressive ones like Obama, have always taken the side of Israel, and even when they have made some kind of concessions to the Palestinian cause, it's always surrounded by how do we secure Israel's right to continue occupying Palestine in the way that they do. So Israel might get slaps on the wrist by some presidents, and other presidents might full on encourage them to do the things that they're doing, but at the end of the day, the American political system is literally built to support Israel, or support of Israel is built into the American political system. I had some critiques of this book, and I don't want to get too into them here. My main thing that I would say is that they kind of skirt around things a lot. They don't go full on with their critique of Israel, and I really, really wish that they did. And they don't really critique some of the underlying problems, in my opinion, which is nationalism in of itself. There are still limits, ironically, in their support for Palestine. Not terribly. At the end of the day, this was not really meant to be much of an exploration of Palestine and the history of Palestine. It's really more about American foreign policy and how it has contributed to and shaped and manufactured consent for what's happening in Palestine up till today. So yeah, I would recommend it, but it's not the best book that I've read on the topic. The other book that I listened to, and I literally just finished it, was The House of Hidden Meanings by RuPaul. I'm a Drag Race fan, so I've always been familiar with RuPaul, but more so familiar with him in the past couple of years since I started watching the show. And I've observed things about his personality, both on the show and, things that he's said off the show and things that people have said about him and whatnot. And I think this book really gave context to a lot of stuff that I've observed about RuPaul. It starts off from his childhood and goes up to, I wouldn't say where he is today. The book is really meant to be a story of how he became the person that he became in terms of the famous RuPaul that we know today, but not really so much what happened after that, like with Drag Race and all of those things. There were parts of this book that made me really emotional, and it was so lovely to also see aspects of myself in RuPaul's own experience. For the most part, I appreciate RuPaul as a person. This book, I wouldn't say made me like a huge fan or a bigger fan or anything like that, but it did make me kind of like understand, okay, this is why this person is the way that they are. They've gone through a lot. They've had to work through a lot. But if it's one thing RuPaul had, it was ambition, determination, conviction, and a belief in himself. That's the main thing that I'm going to take away from this book. Like, if I could believe in myself in the way that RuPaul believed in himself, I'll be fine. We'll all be fine. You might have noticed behind me, I have a little suitcase there. That's because I'm traveling. Yay! I'm going to Guyana for the first time in my life, which I'm very excited about. Guyana is a very special place to me because not only is it, another Caribbean country, my neighbor, so to speak, but my grandfather was from Guyana and my mom was born there. And I may even go to the island Wakenham, which is an island in the Essequibo River. That's where my grandfather was from. That's where my mom was born. And I would love, 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 love to visit Wakenham. But even if I don't, I'm just really happy to go visit Guyana. I'm going with my best friend. We're staying with one of my other really close friends. And it's just for about a week. I am going to be reading Jane Eyre while I'm there, but I'm not taking that copy with me or my other copy because, yes, I have 2 copies of Jane Eyre, don't judge me. I have limited space, so I am just taking my Kindle because I have a copy of it on my Kindle. So, yes, technically I have 3 copies of Jane Eyre. Still, please don't judge me. I don't think I'll finish it while I'm there, but hopefully I make some more progress and I'll get to vlog a bit of Guyana to show you, and I'm really excited about that. I thought that I would narrate my trip to Guyana for you all. This is us taking off and leaving Trinidad. As you can see, it's very, very dusty because of the Sahara dust. That's my best friend Jade reading Caribbean Beat magazine, and that's me reading Jane Eyre. And this is us landing in Georgetown, Guyana. That is Georgetown that you're seeing below there, and that huge river is the Demerara River, one of the 3 main rivers. And in this video, you will see us cross all 3 of those rivers. This is us driving through Georgetown. Like a day or 2 later, we were heading to Wakenham, which is the island that my grandfather was from. This is when we were crossing the Demerara River, which is the river you just saw from the plane. And it is a huge freaking river. This is when we just got onto the bridge and you're seeing the other side of the bank and it looks so far away. It's huge. This is when we got to the Essequibo River. Unfortunately, I did not take any clips of the Essequibo River because I was afraid to take my phone out on the boat. But the Essequibo River is bigger than the Demerara River and it's a delta. It's a river delta. So there are islands in the delta of the river. This is when we just arrived onto Wakenham. As you can see, these houses are so cute and I want a house like this when I grow up. And this piece of land here looks insignificant, but it's really special to me. My mom was born in the house that once stood on this piece of land, and it's right opposite the road from one of the two masjids on the island. Let me give you all a little bit of history about my family on this island. So Wickenham is an island in the Essequibo River Delta. If you want to have an idea of what that looks like, you can just Google it. The Dutch were the first to colonize Guyana. So the word Wickenham in Dutch literally means nameless or waiting on a name, because they never had time to name the island. So the island is literally named Nameless. My grandfather was born and raised on this island, and when he married my Trinidadian grandmother in 1953, she moved to the island to live with him for 9 years, and that's where they had their 3 kids, including my mom. And in 1962, they moved back to Trinidad, which is where my mom was raised, and she hasn't been to this island since she was a teenager, and I am the first in my family to ever visit since she and my uncles would have visited years ago with their parents. This is the Essequibo River again, and this river leads out into the Atlantic Ocean, just like all of the rivers in Guyana. And when you look out into the distance, right there, that's the Atlantic Ocean. This is us leaving the island of Wickenham. It felt like a freaking pilgrimage. Somehow I mustered up the courage to have my phone on the boat going back. On the way back, we saw this monument, which commemorates supposedly the first ever mosque built in Guyana, though I'm not too sure about that. This is us a few days later. This is on top of a hill overlooking the Demerara River again. And this was so freaking majestic, y'all. Guyana is culturally, historically, and politically a Caribbean country, but geographically, honey, mamas, this is very much so South America. Look at that. It's giving very much Brandy and Mr. Whiskers tease. This is a few days later, and this is us crossing the third major river in Guyana, the Berbice River. Berbice is a really important place because, as I said, the Dutch were the first to occupy Guyana, and this is where they first came. They sailed down this river, and they established a town called New Amsterdam, which I believe was the first settlement in Guyana, and it was also the first place where Indian indentured immigrants were brought, and that's why they built this monument here in Berbice to commemorate the arrival of the first Indian indentured immigrants, not just in Guyana, but in the Caribbean as a whole. So this monument is really, really, really special. And this is not the exact spot where they docked. This is when you just get over the Berbice Bridge. But we drove to Highbury, which was the exact spot that they docked. And as you can see, this sign is telling you that it was at this particular location on the 5th of May, 1838, that the first Indians arrived to Guyana. You can't really see the river anymore because there's a whole bunch of like trees and stuff that is blocking it. Where you see my friend standing up behind them, that bushy area with all those trees, behind that is the Berbice River. And we were just kind of like peeking into this sort of shed that's managed by some Indian Cultural Heritage Committee something, and they have this little monument here that sort of explains Indian indentured laborers coming to Guyana. This was our last day in Georgetown. We visited a few other notable monuments. This is called Umanayana. It is a building that is built in the style of how indigenous people always built buildings in Guyana prior to colonialism for thousands of years. And this kind of building is the kind of building that they use to gather or have their meetings. I'm not 100% sure. This is another monument that's right next to Umanayana that honors African freedom fighters, I think. And then we saw this monument, which commemorates the 1823 slave rebellion in Demerara, which was a huge, huge rebellion. Guyana is known for many rebellions, but 2 rebellions in particular, 1823 and 1763. This was the Coffee Rebellion that happened actually in Berbice, even though this monument is in Georgetown, which is in Demerara. And that's an artistic representation of coffee, which I think is really cool. This is just incredible. I wish Trinidad had more stuff like this. Guyana is amazing. And this is us leaving Guyana.
You just saw a couple clips, but we were there for a whole week and it was amazing. I will go back a million times if I could. I highly recommend that you visit Guyana. It's incredible. The Caribbean is just an amazing place, period.
All right, it's been a few days since I got back from Guyana, and obviously while I was there, I didn't finish Jane Eyre, but I did read 2 more chapters. Marriage was about to happen, and then it didn't happen because while they were trying to get married, these people came to the wedding and was like, "We have some tea, Your Honor. We object."
And he's terrible, Your Honor. He's really terrible.
Turns out Mr. Rochester was keeping his ex-wife captive in the, like, attic for 15 years.
Well...
I mean, I figured that was the case. I mean, I always knew that Jane Eyre had the sort of thing with, like, the woman in the attic or whatever. And then I read the summary of Wide Sargasso Sea and I was like, oh, okay, so I basically spoiled myself. So it wasn't a huge surprise or anything. I just really, I don't get the appeal of Mr. Rochester. I don't know. I still have to read till the end of the book to find out. Maybe he does redeem himself. Maybe he does become a good person by the end and I could root for him and Jane. But as of right now, this man needs to be thrown in prison.
Prison, honey.
I do want to acknowledge one thing though, which is that yes, I have been reading this book with a very modern lens. I have been, you know, judging it through a very modern lens, and I'm well aware of the fact that this is a book that was published in the 1840s and set likely some years before that. I am also well aware of the fact that even though it was published so long ago, for the time that it was published, this is a very progressive book. Jane is very feminist for the time that she is represented within, and I acknowledge that. I see that. I don't disagree with that. Most of this video has just been me making a bunch of jokes about Mr. Rochester because I find him to be absurd. I have been making videos on this channel for years now. In fact, next month will make it 9 years since I started making booktube videos. It's really wild to think that it's been almost a decade. And for a long time I've been having this dream of like becoming a really, really big booktuber, and that seemed like it was going to happen at one point. There was this point in time where I really grew a lot, between like 7,000 to 10,000 subscribers, but then after I hit like 10, almost 11,000 subscribers, it sort of plateaued. And so for the last 2 years I've been kind of down on myself because I've been wanting to recover and I've been wanting to continue growing my platform, and I've made like 1 or 2 or 3 videos talking about this before, but I think I've finally come to the conclusion that that's probably not going to happen for me. At this point in my life, I just don't have the capacity to do that, and I don't know if I ever will. Maybe I will one day, but I no longer hold on to the hope that that is going to happen for me. I had this whole spiel on Instagram the other day where I've always struggled with the fact that I really do enjoy creating content, whether it's on Bookstagram or BookTube. Not so much TikTok, that place is a cesspool. But Instagram and YouTube, I've always enjoyed making content on both of those platforms, and I want to continue doing so, but I want to do so without this expectation that it's going to turn into something a lot bigger. And I've kind of sort of decided for myself that from now on, I'm going to view content creation as me creating a digital archive. And what I mean by that is I'm creating content that I am happy with, that I really enjoy, and that I think really shows where I am at a particular point in time, not only with the books that I'm reading at that point in time, but with my own, you know, way of thinking, my own perspective, which I know will evolve and change as I get older. I really enjoy looking at some of my older videos from years ago, even the ones that I've archived. I like to go in and look at them and see how different my thinking was, but also see how what I was thinking 3 years ago is still the case now, but it's evolved and it's become more nuanced. I really enjoy doing that. I really enjoy looking back at my old content, and it makes me proud to see how much I have created. I like the idea of that, and that's why I call it a digital archive. And I think from now on, I'm just going to create content that I'm happy with, and I'm cool with just like a couple hundred people viewing it. At least I know that there are some people, even if it's like 5 or 6 or 7 people, who will sit down and watch my videos and really enjoy what I have to say. And 10 years from now, even if this video only has like 200-300 views, I could look back on it and see where I was 10 years ago, and to me I find that to be really, really valuable.
Mama, kudos for saying that, for spilling, like seriously, oh my god.
So all of that being said, I'm going to end this video here. Yes, I have not finished the book, but this video has gone on way too long. If you would like to see me finish Jane Eyre, stay tuned for the next video. But I still think that this video was really productive. You saw a whole slice of my life over the last couple of months where I happened to have done a lot of stuff. But in addition to that, I did still finish 5 books, and I talked about those 5 books. I'm going to stop talking now because if I continue doing this, we'll just never end this video. So thank you all ever so much for watching this video. I hope you have a lovely, lovely day, and until next time, inshallah, keep reading.